Hi guys, welcome back to another video and welcome to another tutorial. Today is going to be all about shooting. Shooting with power and accuracy is the most effective way to beat the goalkeeper. So I'm going to show you some tips today. Obviously you can always adapt your own style to it, but I'm going to show you some basic technique points that are going to improve your shooting technique dramatically. So let's get right into it. So just to clear up a big misconception that a lot of players have, some people think that you need to have big, strong, powerful legs in order to achieve power in a shot. And that's not the case whatsoever. 99.9% of the power comes through raw technique. We see this in all levels. There are skinnier guys that can achieve a lot more shot power than some guys who have big muscular legs. And that's because they've developed a technique that they can hit the ball cleanly and they're letting the ball do the work. It's not coming through the strength of the player, but the technique and the connection on the ball. So let's just clear that up. You don't need to have the biggest legs in the world. You just got to be out on the pitch developing your technique each and every day. And that's how you're going to achieve better shot power. So the first step in any shooting technique is the run-up. And this is where a lot of the power, a lot of the momentum is generated and it adds a lot more force through the kicking action itself. And this translates into other sports. Let's take a javelin throw, for example. You don't see them just stand on the spot and throw it. It's not coming just from their arm strength. It's coming through the whole movement itself. So they have a big, long run-up. They're generating a lot of energy. And that just adds to the output when they finally release that javelin. And it goes even further than it ever could if they were standing still. So the same applies for a football shooting technique as well. You want to generate as much energy before you strike the ball as possible, because that's just going to add more force when you actually kick through the ball. So for an effective run-up, I would say take at least 5 or 6 steps back, whether it's a moving ball or whether it's a stationary ball. Have about 5 or 6 good strides. You want to slightly lean forwards and don't just take small steps, really widen that stride. The wider the strides, the more energy you're going to get behind that ball. So it's going to look a little something like this. So the next step and the most important step for achieving accuracy in your shot is your planting foot. So your planting foot wants to go beside the ball, probably about 6 inches away from the ball, and you want to point your standing foot exactly where you want the ball to go. So if I'm aiming for that right hand side, I'm literally pointing my standing foot, my big toe, exactly towards that right hand side of the goal. That's just going to allow my kicking foot to follow through in that direction as well, which gives it a greater chance of hitting exactly where you want it to. And also with the standing leg, have a slight bend, just a slight bend in the knee. That's going to increase your stability and help with balance, because you really need to be balanced when you're shooting. That's going to allow you to hit the exact spot on the ball you're trying to hit, and you'll see a lot more accuracy in your shot when you have a slight bend in the knee. So when you plant that foot, even just before you plant that foot, I always like to raise my arm as high as possible, because you're going on one leg, you want that arm out for balance. And another part of your arm movement as well that's very important, when you strike through that ball, you want your arm to come back across your body. So as your foot's traveling one way, you want your arm to go the other. It's like a snapping movement. This is going to create even more power and even more energy through your shot. Now we're going to talk about the part of the ball we want to be hitting. And this is something I used to do when I was a lot younger. As you become more comfortable with the technique, you don't need to think about this. It becomes second nature. But when I was first starting out and I really wanted to achieve that accuracy in my shots, I really thought about it this way. So let's say I'm aiming for that right-hand side. A good way to find the part of the ball you want to be hitting is to draw sort of an imaginary line from where you want to hit the ball through the ball. So if I'm aiming for that right-hand side, I draw an imaginary line, comes through the ball. So I know I want to be hitting it around here. So you want to hit through the center of the ball. If you hit too low on the ball, it's just going to sky over the bar. If you hit too much on the right-hand side, it's just going to spin. You can hit just below the center to achieve a little bit of backspin. That's going to help the ball rise into the top corner. It's going to be very difficult for the goalkeeper to save. And if you find a ball that has a logo on it, if you want to help yourself by actually putting the logo where you want the ball to be hit, that's just going to help you when you're starting out. Obviously, when the ball's moving, you're not going to have that. But for you out there who are just starting to learn the shooting technique, I would really recommend this. This is something that really helped me when I first started out. So the next step is where on the foot you want to be striking the ball with. And I usually find that most players have the most success when they strike with this area right here. Some people call it the instep, others call it the sweet spot, because you get a sweet strike on the ball. Call it what you want, but you can feel with your hand, the front of the foot is a lot softer, and as you work your way up, the bones become a lot more dense. So when you strike the ball with a more dense bone, it's going to have a greater impact on the ball, and you find yourself getting a cleaner strike. So everybody's going to have a slightly different sweet spot on their foot, but it's going to be generally around this area. So you need to play around with it and figure out what gives you the best success. But for me, it's about halfway down the foot and just beside the laces. That's the hardest part of my foot, so when I strike it with this area here, I usually find I get a lot cleaner strike. So to achieve this, you need to expose this area. And the way to do that is to flex your foot out like this. So you want to flex it out and lock that ankle. Locking the ankle just means flexing the ankle muscles to keep it rigid, so that if someone tried to pull your toes up, they would have a hard time doing it. So you want to flex it out to the side and keep it very firm, very stiff. You don't want a floppy foot when you're striking it. It's not going to come off clean. You're probably going to add extra spin onto it. It's not going to achieve the results you want. So lock that ankle and strike through with the sweet spot. Now this is the most important part of the leg action itself for creating power, and it's your backswing. So the bigger your backswing, you're putting more force through that ball because it's had a greater distance to travel. You're creating even more energy and momentum, and that just gives a greater output when you actually come to make contact with the ball itself. It's kind of like a golf swing. If they're driving the ball, they bring that club right behind their neck and they swing and follow through. But all that power is coming through their backswing here. Same when you're kicking a football. Maximum backswing means greater power on the shot. Now, upon making contact with that ball, you really want to crouch over the ball for that split second. That's going to keep the ball low and stop it skying over the bar. The next step is when you start to follow through. This is very important for your accuracy as well as getting a clean strike on the ball. So when you follow through, a lot of players just want to put their full strength into it and just smash their foot off to the side like that, having no control over their body. But you need to be very disciplined with the follow through. So when you strike that ball, when you piece all those previous steps together and you finally get to strike that ball, as you make contact, your initial movement needs to go towards your target. So you want to expose that part of the foot towards the target, and then your follow through begins to go towards that target initially. And then when the ball's left your foot, that's when you can bring your foot across the body. But that initial strike on the ball, your follow through really needs to go towards that target to improve your accuracy. And the final part of the technique is to come off of your standing foot as you follow through that ball. This is going to add even more energy through the movement, and you'll see even more power on your shot. As you follow through that ball, if you stay on your standing foot, you're restricting your follow through. You really want to have the freedom to give maximum follow through as well. So a good way to do that, to enhance your follow through, as you strike that ball, come off of your planted foot and land back on your shooting foot. You'll see this in itself creates a lot more power through your strike. So how do we know when we've hit a clean strike? What it looks like is when you hit that ball, it travels through the air in such a way that it looks like it could travel for miles, and the only thing that stops it is it hitting the back of the net. You really don't want these floaty shots where it goes up in the air and just kind of backspins like a long pass and eventually lands floating into the goal. You really want to hit it cleanly so that it's thumping the back of the net. I'm just going to show you what I mean. So I'm going to piece all of these steps together. So I'm going to take a long stride. My chest is going to be leaning forward as I'm running onto that ball. I'm going to plant my foot about 6 inches beside the ball, pointing towards my target, which will be this right-hand side here. As I make contact with the ball, I'm going to have a slight bend in my knee for stability, exposing my sweet spot by locking my ankle and flexing my foot out, hitting through the center of that ball, so basically where this New Balance logo is, following through towards my target with my arm out for balance, and as I strike the ball, slightly crouching over, slightly following through towards my target, then letting it come off to the side, coming off of my standing foot, landing back on my kicking foot again. And we should see the ball traveling at good pace through the air, looking like it's going to travel for miles, and the only thing stopping it is the back of the net. So that's the end of the tutorial. I really hope you enjoyed it, but more importantly, I hope you learned something new today. These are just the key steps, but you need to adapt your own style to it as well and find a shooting technique that works best for yourself. Remember, the most important point for successful shooting is going out there and repeating it each and every day until it becomes second nature. But that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you smash that like button, hit that subscribe button for weekly training videos, and I will see you guys in the next video.